On October 21st, IBJ unveils the 2025 Women of Influence. Join us to celebrate Indy's most inspiring leaders and hear the powerful stories behind their success. Don't miss this moment. Register now at ibj.com/influence2025.
This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the afternoon of Monday, September 29th, 2025. I'm Alex Brown. Bruce White, the founder of Merrillville-based hospitality company White Lodging Service Corporation, who died in 2023, is being honored in a new documentary titled Bruce, Begin with the End in Mind. Mike Banas with White Lodging says the goal is to highlight White's journey through his nearly 40-year career.
In a perfect world, Bruce could have told his own story. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible. So, he's done a lot of different things and throughout his life. And we tried to capture each one of those, especially at different periods of his life.
He said they also wanted to share White's story and values-driven leadership style with current and future employees. Hammond Mayor Tom McDermott says plans for a $7 billion expansion of the Digital Crossroads data center are moving forward. While the groundbreaking has not yet been set for the project, which would add 450,000 square feet of space on the campus, developer Decennial Group aims to complete the project by the end of 2028. Ball State University has introduced what it is calling a Talent Pipeline Toolkit, a sort of one-stop shop for university programs and initiatives available to businesses and communities to support workforce development. The online toolkit highlights a host of initiatives in which communities, businesses, and business organizations can collaborate with the university, including networking opportunities, mentorships, site visits, and executive programs. From the number one source for Indiana business news, this is Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.
Purdue University's long-standing independent student newspaper, the Purdue Exponent, will no longer employ international students. Mark Mazurek has more.
The Exponent's publisher, Kyle Charters, said the newspaper and the university came to similar conclusions earlier this month. The Exponent, which pays students for their work, lost vendor status when Purdue took actions to distance itself from the publication this summer. That included not renewing a decades-long vendor contract, revoking student journalists' parking passes, and ending university assistance with newspaper distribution on campus. The university also asked the publication to remove the word Purdue from its website. In an editorial published last week, editor-in-chief Olivia Mapes said the publication is not hiring international students, quote, in the interest of their safety and to avoid jeopardizing their legal status in the United States, end quote. Due to federal laws, international students on F-1 visas are not able to work for organizations outside a university except under specific circumstances. As a result of this development, the Exponent parted ways with 4 international student journalists on staff and told about 8 to 10 prospective staffers they would not be able to join. Charters said the Exponent is conferring with attorneys to see if there's a pathway for students on F-1 visas. He said unless something changes, the Exponent won't be able to employ international students unless there's a very narrow path, such as if they're in a major in which the curriculum would fit into the work being done at the paper. However, Purdue doesn't have a journalism program. I'm Mark Mazurek for Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Indiana's clean energy sector recorded only modest job growth in 2024, according to a new report. The latest Clean Jobs America report, published by San Francisco-based business group Environmental Entrepreneurs, indicated that clean energy occupations across the United States grew by 2.8% in 2024, adding nearly 100,000 jobs and outpacing broader employment growth of 0.8%. In Indiana, however, the pace was slower. The report found that Indiana saw just 0.4% growth in clean energy jobs last year, bringing the total to approximately 90,015 Hoosier jobs. The city of Noblesville is expecting a future tourism boom after Indianapolis-based USA Gymnastics selected the city to be the new home for its headquarters, as well as a training and wellness center. Our partners at the IBJ reported last week that the national sports governing body plans to build a new facility on a site directly north of the arena at Innovation Mile, which recently opened as the home of the Noblesville Boom, the G League affiliate of the Indiana Pacers. Mayor Chris Jensen.
It plays into our calculation, right? We need to make sure that we have a solid ROI when we make investments like this. And the fact that, USA Gymnastics is going to drive about 22,000 heads and beds every year to central Indiana, and that's a big deal. And then overall tax incentives and the economic condition that you mentioned, they're going to drive tourists and revenue right here to the Hoosier State, and that plays a big part into our calculations.
The new facility will include training spaces for national teams as well as individuals competing in international competitions. It will also host clinics and classes for aspiring young gymnasts and coaches. Purdue head football coach Matt Painter is this week's guest on the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC, a weekly conversation with high-profile Hoosiers in business, sports and entertainment, and beyond. Available now on the IBJ Media app or your favorite podcast provider. I'm Alex Brown for Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand.
From broadcast to podcast, Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick is now available anytime on YouTube or in your podcast feed. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcast or at ibjpodcast.com.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.